When you look back at the film, Joe, how did Daniel move around to you on the film? Did you see anything live? Did you think he was able to protect him? Was he moving around well enough to be effective?
Yeah, you cut out a little bit on me, but based on the part of the question I could hear right there, Ryan, I'd say the way he moved in the game is what we expected. We put him through enough in practice last week to make sure he was put in a position where he could protect himself. We knew that there were things that were going to come up in the game and some limitations that he was going to have throughout the game. We're willing to live with those. But in terms of the question, do we feel like he moved the same, in practice as did in the game? I'd say the answer to that is yes, Ryan. What we expected to see, we pretty much saw.
Zach?
It did seem like by the end of the game he was maybe limping around a little more. I don't know if that was just wear and tear. Like how did he come out of the game? I guess from what you understand.
Yeah. So listen, I had a conversation obviously after the game yesterday, and then I talked to him again this morning. Obviously some bumps and bruises. We didn't do anything that aggravated that leg injury right there. He felt like he came out. Obviously there was probably a little bit of wear and tear as the game went on. He took some hits in the pocket yesterday. I think that's just kind of natural. Any quarterback getting up is going to have a little bit of, wear and tear on him right there. I'll check back with him, tomorrow. I know he visited with the doctors after I talked to him today, and I haven't talked to our medical staff other than very early this morning until they're going to get ready to leave the building today. The biggest meeting we'll have will be tomorrow when guys are about 48 hours outside the game. That'll kind of, tell us in terms of going through the week who we can plan on practicing, managing, having for the game, things of that nature.
And separate from that, what was your diagnosis on, gave up 8 sacks and 5 in particular to Hassan Reddick? Like when you went back and watched the film, was there any common theme there?
No, I think there was a multitude of things we have to do better, coaching and playing. There were some situations where it just came down to they were good in coverage. We blocked for a long time, and, Daniel wasn't going to pull the ball and run in some of those circumstances yesterday, and some of those where you call them coverage sacks if you want to call them that. But, it's all tied together. It's never one person. It's never one thing. It comes down to everybody on the field and the coach with the plan put together and the plays we called that circumstance. So, look, obviously he's a good player. They made plays. You have to give them credit. They really showed up yesterday and played their top game, and we've got to be better all across the board, starting with myself.
Leonard?
Hey, Joe, did Daniel have any x-rays after the game on other injuries?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that, Pat. Not that I'm avoiding that, but when I check with the medical staff, I'll kind of get more information on that. I can tell you there's no broken bones or anything of that nature, if that's what you're referring to right there. No. They would have told me that immediately.
Okay, yeah. No, I was just seeking clarification. You said you visited with the doctors today. I didn't know if that was just like a routine checkup on the hamstring or if that was some new injury that needed further examination.
No, so the checkup with the doctors, that's routine. Every Monday we got a full staff of guys in here. And what they do is they meet with the players. They come in through the day. They check on everything. If there's anyone who has to go get an MRI or an X-ray or some kind of opinion on something they're doing, they handle that today. There are circumstances where we go ahead and we handle things after the game immediately if they need to be. And then what they do is kind of compile, because the guys come in at different times throughout the day. With the buildings being closed right now to the players and coaches, we have to stagger the guys that come in for treatment, for checkups, and for workouts throughout the day to make sure we keep the numbers thin. So right now it's a lot less, however you want to say it, it's a lot less of a fluid situation of getting information back on the players because they're truly staggered throughout the day based on the situation with COVID on Mondays and Tuesdays.
Real quick, if you don't mind, if Daniel were to look the same way he looked going into this last game this week, would you play him against the Browns, or are all options on the table for you in order to try and win Sunday, including possibly resting him?
Yeah, if Daniel's healthy to play and he looked the way he did in practice last week, I'd have no hesitation playing Daniel at all. I mean, we've made that calculation. We have a lot of confidence in Colt. This has nothing to do with Colt. All right, but, there's also a commitment we've made to Daniel as our quarterback and how we're running this offense. And we have confidence in all of our players, but if he's healthy enough to go out there and protect himself, and we don't feel he's putting himself in a greater danger to be injured worse, and he's going to give the team a competitive advantage of going out there, then we're going to play him. And we have no hesitation. And that just because we're going to play Daniel doesn't mean at any time that we're not going to have a plan to put Colt in for a certain package or situation in the game, or we're not going to have a plan for any other player on the roster to at some point be used in a certain situation or circumstance to give us an advantage. So, look, all options are always on the table in terms of what we're going to do by game plan. But to answer your question directly and simply, if Daniel's healthy enough to go out there and we think he's not at a greater danger to be damaged or hurt, then we'll play him.
Lombardo?
Hey, Joe. Just kind of piggybacking off that a little bit. Based on the way Daniel kind of came through yesterday and kind of limited in terms of the running game, do you guys need to change your perspective or what you evaluate on him in practice to, clear him? Do you need to have a different set of standards going into next week based on how last week played out?
In terms of what? In terms of him coming out healthy, or in terms of what he wasn't doing in the game plan?
Well, in terms of just seeing him through the week in practice, do you need to see him to be able to do more, to be able to be more effective in the game than was this past week?
No, our evaluation was to make sure that he could operate in the pocket, that he could, defend himself. He had to leave the pocket a couple of times. He did, and that he could do that effectively and be able to get rid of the ball or get the ball down the field and protect himself. In terms of how we call or structure the game plan, that's on us as coaches to make sure we're inventive enough and creative enough to put ourselves in situations that if we're limited with any player in a certain something they can do physically, that we have to give them another option.
Sports.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Paul.
Staying on Daniel, he took a lot of hits. You said he had bumps and bruises. Was any of that, you think, when you watch the film, a result of him not being able to move like he normally can?
Well, I think everything's always connected, Paul. I think obviously he took some hits in the pocket where there's some times that maybe he could have left the pocket and extended plays. You could argue one way or another. Were there other times that had nothing to do with that? Yeah, there were definitely times like that as well. So I think any player that comes out of a game, look, there's been every game this year that guy's come out with some kind of bump and bruise, whether it looks like he didn't get touched at all or not. I mean, you played through a professional game. Everyone's coming out the next day sore, tired, worn down, and everyone's getting checked on all the time.
So because of that, was he indeed at some greater risk? Maybe not for the hamstring, but for bumps and bruises or other injuries, because you think he can protect himself, but he could not move and escape some of those hits like he normally could.
Yeah, again, I just go back to we saw that he could protect himself in the pocket, that he could move fluidly through the pocket, he could get rid of the ball if he needed to, and if he had to eat a sack at some point, that was something we were going to go in the game plan knowing could happen at some point. So obviously, there's some things that come up in the game. You get hit in the pocket at certain points. He's no different than the other 31 quarterbacks in the NFL. They all deal with the same risk every time they drop back in the pocket. So, to answer you directly, he was able to protect himself yesterday, and no, there's no regrets. There's no second guessing. We took a lot of time discussing a lot of things and scenarios with doctors, coaches, making sure at the, best position for the team, and that's the decision we went with and move forward.
Thanks.
Hey, Joe, just in regard to one particular hit that Daniel took late in the game, he seemed to come up limping on his left leg, noticeably. He stayed in the rest of the series. There was a punt, and then he came over. He had a conversation with Colt. Colt immediately started taking warm-up throws. So it seemed like something in addition to the hamstring had happened there. Can you?
No, at that point in the game, I just made the decision to go with Colt. It was late in the game at that point. I was going to get Colt in just to get a few reps at that point right there. That had nothing to do with something that happened on that drive right there.
Do you expect Daniel to be ready to practice Wednesday, or is it a little too early to know?
I honestly couldn't give you an accurate information. I got to talk to Ronnie and his staff along with what the doctor's feedback. Look, talking to Daniel this morning, the conversation was more about the hamstring, how his leg felt, how he was through the flow of the game. He assured us he came out with the hamstring, really the same as what he went in. Felt good through the flow of the game. We had a long conversation. I let him speak for himself on a lot of things. But there was really no talk about anything other than, the hamstring going in.
We'll take three more. Rock, Jordan, Art. Rock.
I know how much you love talking about injured quarterbacks, Joe, but I'm going to ask you about another one of your favorite topics, and that's the standings in the NFC East. You fell to second place here. How do you move forward, and how do you talk to the team about the situation and the 3 games left?
Well, I've already addressed the team today in a squad meeting. And look, real simply, the focus is still what the focus has been the entire year. To come to work, to improve as a team, to move forward and play our best ball next Sunday. That's the only thing that can help us. That's the only thing that really matters. Our focus this year was very clear, cut, and simple, to become the best team we could be, all right, to establish a culture and lay a foundation for this program going forward. And that included becoming the best team we could be this year. And that includes, daily and weekly improvement. I've seen that from this team. Obviously, yesterday we had to coach and play better. That wasn't, the result we were looking for. But we need to come back to work on Wednesday, put our nose at the grindstone, and keep moving forward. So in terms of all the division standings, look, the same as when last week everyone wanted to talk about being in first place. That wasn't the focus of the week. And being in second place, that's not the focus of the week either. The only thing that's going to help us right now is playing our best game against the Browns.
Does Does it matter to you whether or not this team makes the playoffs?
The only thing I'm concerned with right now are the Cleveland Browns. So anything beyond that, again, are hypothetical games. At this point right here, it's important to me to go out there and play our best game this Sunday.
Jordan?
Hey, Joe, what did you think about the ability of your receivers to get open and create separation yesterday? It looked like they were pretty tightly covered on a lot of times at least where the ball went.
Well, you got to give them credit. They had a good game plan. They definitely did a lot of stuff in terms of double teaming and bracketing a lot of our receivers down the field. There's definitely some tight coverage in man situations. I saw a lot of opportunities where our guys made catches in tight situations. I saw a lot of guys separate from man coverage and get open at times, and there's other times we have to do a better job of winning our matchups. Okay, that ties in a lot of things. That's not just each individual receiver. That's the timing of the routes. That's the timing of the throws. That's the call at the right time. Or that's making sure we recognize the coverage and getting ourselves in the right situation. And there's a lot of things that tie in together right there. Obviously we want to win more matchups. We want to make more plays down the field. But we have confidence in our receivers, and these are the guys we're going to play with going forward.
Last one here, Art.
Hey, Joe, and obviously you're a lot more in tune with the details of what's going on in special teams than I am. But last couple of weeks, obviously, we see what's happening. You're not playing as well on special teams as you did really for most of the season. Have you noticed that teams are trying to take advantage of you schematically? Are there execution issues that are taking place that you're not happy with? What's happening on some of these breakdowns?
Well, we all have to do our job better, number one, okay? But this hasn't been, one thing. It's not a schematic disadvantage. We're not getting, isolated into something that we can't make an adjustment, make a correction. There haven't been repeat mistakes, but over 6 phases, if you have, an issue in one phase a week, that's going to be glaring and go ahead and be magnified over time. And that's fair. That's the way the National Football League is. That's what we signed up for. We've got to coach it better. We've got to play it better. It starts with me. Yesterday, obviously, with the returns, that they did a good job on us. We have to do a better job covering in space. That comes down to play with good field leverage, good space tackling. That comes in the specialists doing their job, the coverage units doing their jobs, and make sure we tie it all together. So, look, this has been a strength for us for most of the season. There's been a one-off here or there, but those one-offs in special teams, everything's a one-play situation, a one-play scenario. So there is no second down on special teams. You go out there and you just have one chance to operate and execute, and we have to make sure we make the most of our opportunities.